Em, welcome to the Where the Climate Things Are podcast.
Hi, Addie. Thanks for
Thank you
having
for
me.
being here. Yeah, of course. This is really exciting. This might be one of my fastest turnarounds from like meeting for the first time to being on the show because we met like a couple
Yeah,
days ago.
yeah, cool.
And I said, hey, I think
PR.
you need to be on the show. It's great. It's great. I'm really excited to have you on. I was wondering if we could start out with just in whatever way you want to take this, if you could introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, yeah, thanks again. I just wanted to say thanks again. Yeah, a little bit about me. My name's Emme Hayes, and I'm creator and founder of Articles in Common. We're a next gen resale marketplace for outdoor gear, using resale to reshape outdoor culture and fund climate action.
Nice. I'm excited to dive into all parts of that model because it's super, super cool. Also, I just have to say this, your website is stunning. Like whoever designed
Thanks.
that, maybe it was you. It's so beautiful. I'm going to link to it so everyone can go see. But everyone I've sent your website to since, because I've talked about you a lot since we met this week, everyone's like really also very complimentary of the design. So it's well
Aw,
done.
thank you. Thanks a lot. That means a lot.
It's really well done. It's cool. And it showcases a lot about the model and also showcases the products that you're reselling. So we'll talk about that too. But
Yeah.
I think I mentioned this when we met this week, but would you also, I ask everyone this to start us off, but I'm curious what your aha moment on climate was for you, or environment, but kind of like that awakening moment in your life.
I mean, I could answer that a couple of ways, like in just in terms of awakening in general to like, what's really going on and how involved the government is happened like so long ago. I would say it was Who Killed the Electric Car when I watched that documentary. It
Hmm.
really opened my eyes to the government working against, EVs, and that kind of general awakening is when that happened. But in terms of specifically with the outdoor industry, that was right before I started Articles in Common, and that was around 2020, 2021. And, part of it has a lot to do with my knowledge in the apparel manufacturing industry and knowing firsthand exactly how toxic that is, how wasteful it truly is. And the general consumer just sees, the one jacket or the one beanie or the one pair of boots that they buy, but they don't see all of the material that was thrown away during the development
Hmm.
phase, during the design phase, during the sampling phase. There's so many phases up until it gets to the shelf on the store.
Hmm.
And a lot of people don't see that. And unless you're in the industry, and it's disheartening to be a part of, to work in that, because especially for me, who's someone that cares about the environment, I really felt like I came to a crossroads where I had to decide, like, okay, am I going to continue on in fashion and ignore this red flag, or can I just take a leap of faith and try to do something to mitigate it? I know I'm not going to solve the climate crisis on my own. The that's not what I claim. um, but I just want to be a part of the solution and not the problem. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, and you've spoken. We spoke about you being really inside the industry. Can you talk a little bit to kind of take us back before we get to articles in common? Can you take us back to a little bit more about your background? And like you sort of alluded to, like I've been in the outdoor industry, I've seen it all. Like, what was your design or your creative background, and how did it involve the outdoor industry? Because I'm curious, like what then brought you to that like crux point you just mentioned of like I can either keep doing this or I can change. I can mitigate?
Um, I was spending a lot of time outdoors, like to escape this toxic environment of the fashion industry. I was backpacking and it all started about, at first it was very casual hikes and things like that. Um, and the more time I spent outdoors, the more I wanted to stay outdoors. And it became more and more difficult to go back to work, the
Hmm.
following Monday. I was just very much the weekend warrior trying to peak bag or, whatever I could do to feel connected to the outdoors. Um, but, I also started guiding outdoors as well,
Hmm.
and specifically like teaching women how to solo backpack in the outdoors and how to be
Wow.
self-sufficient outdoors and how to be safe or how to feel safe. And I would always make an effort to have conversation around the climate crisis at any trip I was guiding on. And because I noticed from like, whether it was wolfer training, like wilderness first response training, or any other type of outdoor class that I took, nobody was talking about the environment.
Hmm.
Nobody was talking about the climate crisis. And it was like, wow, shouldn't we be, as an industry, shouldn't we be talking about this in every single chance that we have? And I really started to feel like, okay, if you are in the outdoor industry and you are not taking it upon yourself to talk and address the climate crisis to whoever is willing to listen, you are doing a disservice to the outdoors.
Hmm.
That's really
Uh,
the stance that I started to develop um, during my time as a guide. And as that, as my relationship to the outdoors changed, so did my relationship with myself.
hmm.
Um, I mean, in the sense that I really didn't feel like I was being true to myself working in fashion. Um, that I was, not really going after what I wanted. Um, yeah.
Hmm. That's I mean, I think what you said is like the thesis of this whole podcast and project, and like we have a responsibility to be talking about the outdoors while we're recreating, or the environment, the environmental issues and climate while we're recreating there. And I thought something you said was so interesting, which we'll get into, about like how the outdoor industry is one of the worst sort of offenders maybe of like the gear and the constant need for like more consumption. But we're sort of maybe sold on this idea of like it helps you connect with nature, so you need this backpack, and so get it, and then it will help you to like be in nature more. And it's the irony of that, I think, is not lost on me, and like certainly you highlighted that for me as well. I'm curious too, another background question was more around like, so you worked in the fashion industry,
Mhm.
you were in the fashion industry before maybe making this shift, and then it sounds like the outdoor recreation sort of came with that. Can you talk a little bit, if it's not like too dramatic to talk about, like what was your time like there, what were your roles, like what kind of specific background or job did you hold in that? And you also mentioned maybe working in the outdoor industry, or was that guiding?
Yes. Outdoor
Okay.
guiding.
Got
Yeah.
outdoor guiding. Cool. But you were in
Backcountry
fashion
guiding.
before you made this transition. So
Yes.
talk a little bit
Yes.
about that, just because I think it sets up like then how you understand so well like circularity and materials and resale and upcycling and everything.
And marketing and branding and
And
all of
all
that,
of the
the whole
pieces. Yeah.
machine, the whole
Yeah.
machine. Because so I was a fashion designer, apparel designer. Fashion design sounds so like pretentious.
Sure. Sure.
But yeah, I was an apparel designer. And during my, like, once you see how clothes get made, I mean, I've worked in all different types of apparel, from denim to leather to uh, like active wear, everything from to ready to wear, and ultimately landed towards the end of my fashion work in um, sweaters specifically. Once you see, how things get made, you can't unsee that.
Mm.
And you can't ignore that. You just can't. And the people that do ignore it, I think it's because they've bought into that thing that they're selling, which is like the brand. They've bought into that. They want to be a part of this industry because they want those clothes. They want those things. And they want to, be a part of the process in producing those things. And I think, as a creator, as a designer, someone with an art background, you inherently want to create. I think that's just a part of being a human. I think that's human nature. But at what cost? Why can't we focus on creating something without causing harm to something else? And, it was in fashion that I realized that there's no such thing as sustainable apparel. It just doesn't exist.
Wow.
And so that's what drove me to resale. That's what made me start thinking about resale and circularity and how do we even build that in the outdoors. But we start by having the conversation around it, because right now there is no conversation around it. There's conversation around DEI, there's conversation around access and retaining our access or increasing our access to the wild, to the outdoors, to public lands and defending public lands. But there's no talk about human-driven climate change and what our impact is on wildlife and their habitat that we are ultimately treating as this disposable playground.
Wow. So as I said before, I could just I feel like I could just press play and be like, say it all. Like everything we talked about earlier this week, I was like hanging on every word. My jaw was dropping open. So yes, yes, yes to all. I mean, so you're at this point where you are turning maybe to resale and you're realizing there's this sort of aha moment there too of this is an industry that maybe you can't say there's no version of sustainable apparel or there's no version of sustainable fashion. Did you look at other organizations or companies that already existed and then you couldn't find anything, so you started articles? How did that what was that process like in the realization phase of you being I need to start my own thing?
Because I would follow along. I would be very brand aware of what kind of sustainable efforts they were advertising or marketing, and I would be excited, that someone was trying. But then I ultimately would be disappointed because it would be, for example, I would run into things like, oh, they claim, they preach about protecting the planet and saving the planet, but then they ship their jackets in a plastic poly bag, in a plastic mailer. Everything. It took me 3 plastic bags to get to the jacket that I bought. Or I send in a jacket to their repair program or trade-in program or upcycle program, and I don't get it back. And they say it doesn't qualify. And then I started feeling like, okay, you didn't create this resale program or this trade-in program or this repair program to help me. You created it to check off your list that you've now provided this customer-facing solution to build circularity in the outdoors. When in reality, you actually don't even own that system. It's a third-party company that's actually running that for you, and you don't have anything to do with it. And so, as someone in the outdoors who's trying to live an environmentally, as low impact as possible, that became really frustrating for me because I felt like, well, they're a business. They're not going to do the right thing. As a business, they're built to drive profit. They're not built to protect the planet. They're not built to be sustainable. And I just started dreaming up what I wished existed. And I hated that there was all this emphasis on buy better. And this isn't even just specifically with the outdoors. This is just some of the struggle that I experienced and still experience as just, a human. And that's just buying better, buying plastic free, making sure I'm recycling everything, not using any single-use plastic, not using plastic bags. I'm working my butt off here, trying to do everything to reduce my impact. And yet none of these businesses are.
Hmm.
And it's like,
Hmm.
okay, so then I started thinking about it, like, if all these brands started reducing the amount that they produce just from one SKU off their product line,
Yeah.
that would have way more of an impact than compared to if all of us just bought better stuff.
Yeah.
And I just started to feel like they're not, the system is set up to fail. Like, it's
Hmm.
not really set up to be sustainable. It's not really set up to provide a sustainable circular solution, because what's truly sustainable is circular, right? Because now we're seeing, all the stuff that ends up in landfill actually, or, instead of going to the landfill, is going to Ghana and places like that. That's just like mountains, literally mountains of clothes
Mountains.
next
Yeah.
to the ocean. Like, it's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. Can you define circular for folks listening if they don't know what that means, and in context of fashion or apparel even?
In a perfect world, circular means nothing ever gets thrown away. Everything gets either upcycled. There's a lot of terminology: upcycled, downcycled, recycled, you
Yeah.
know? And so, yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, circular means that everything gets reused, everything gets reincorporated in some fashion, in some form. And in the apparel industry, that conversation has been taking place, has been ongoing for probably decades now. It's been a long time. And companies like the Ellen MacArthur Foundation,
Mm-hmm.
they were one of the pioneers in building the sustainable movement in the fashion industry. And so I would be a part of these conversations, you know, as someone in that trade. I would go to these sustainable conferences in apparel, in fashion, and then I would see, some outdoor brands there who
Mm.
claim that they're not a part of the fashion business. They're not in the business of fashion. Well, then what are
Hmm.
you doing at a fashion trade show event? You know, it's
Yeah.
like, speak your truth. Just tell people the
Yeah.
truth.
Right.
And so, yeah, I, having that, seeing all of that unfold, and it's still unfolding. There's still a lot of progress to take place in circularity in fashion, but the outdoor industry isn't even close. They haven't even scratched the surface in having those conversations as an industry. There's been talk about PFAS, and
Yeah.
then I started asking myself, well, why is that? Why aren't we talking about this in the outdoors? Like, no one's addressing this. And
Yeah.
here the climate crisis is becoming more and more and more urgent. And some people that I would talk to, in the industry, in the outdoor industry, would say, well, there's no such thing. We're never going to reach net zero. And it's
Hmm.
like, well, not with that attitude.
No. Yeah, totally.
you know
Totally. Yeah.
And I would be like, wow, you're in the outdoors and you think this way? And there's other people that
Interesting.
think this way. They're not alone,
Mm-hmm.
And then it became obvious to me that outdoors does not mean you care about the planet.
Hmm.
It means you care about outdoor recreation. And the outdoor industry is built on outdoor recreation. You don't have one without the other. And
And sales.
so
And
everything that they do in terms of, you look at some of these nonprofits, and a lot of them do really great work. It's not to shame nonprofits, but let's take, for example, the public lands issue, because that is still very much at the forefront of what's going on right now. And there was so much movement in that. The outdoor industry really came together to push back on that and get that removed, right? And everybody celebrated on social, like celebrated so loudly about, like, yeah, we did it. And what really stood out to me is like the fact that the outdoor industry comes together to protect public lands because of what they have access to or what they might lose access to,
hmm. Hmm.
and consequently protects wildlife and their habitat. But But that's not the reason why they're protecting it. They're protecting it because of access. Because if you lose access, if we lose access, that reduces outdoor recreation, that reduces profit.
Yeah.
So you have all these different nonprofits. And the thing is that I would start to join different nonprofits to like want to make an impact, even though I'm a tiny little company, I want to do something. I want to do something different. And I would join like different organizations, and then there would be no talk about the climate crisis. There would be no, and there would be people from North Face, Patagonia, wherever, like Camelback or, just any outdoor brand. There would be so many different representatives from outdoor brands that are a part of these nonprofit organizations using that to lobby for more access. These brands are helping to support their $1.2 trillion economy. They're not there to protect the planet, because if they were, why is it that here we're facing the dismantling of the Marine Mammal Protection Act and the Endangered Species Act? You don't see all of these nonprofit outdoor organizations like surging together and
Rush.
using the power of the outdoor industry to put a stop to this, to get this removed from uh, the bill, And it's like, so what's the real incentive? What's the real driving motivation behind all of these outdoor nonprofits, And it's not, and I don't want to say all, but I've sat in on a handful of them that really made me realize that the outdoor industry is not participating in the fight against the climate crisis.
Yeah. And that's, I think, why both of us are doing what we're doing in different ways. I remember like when you were bringing this up for me, it was the first time that I really had admittedly connected like public lands equals more access, yes, but actually more recreation, which means more gear sales. So there's sort of that vicious cycle of like, oh, that's why, like to your point, the Endangered Species Acts are not like, people are not rallying around that outcry. And I appreciate, like, I think you're right to also, I agree with like some nonprofit, like maybe there are some nonprofits possibly that we could name maybe that are like working in different ways, but I also see what you're saying absolutely, of like this general industry coming together, brands, nonprofits, advocacy organizations. I mean, I guess I'm most skeptical based on what you've said about brands, right? The brand involvement, like what are
Yeah.
they driving towards here? And so when you then you like on this journey of founding, you decided, I'm gonna create my own thing. I'm gonna make this entity called Articles in Common, and I'm going to change the way that the outdoor industry does things. I'm curious, can you tell us now the big reveal? Like, what is Articles in Common and how does it work? And also, like we can start there. I'm curious, like as a user, to even like walk through like what is the journey if I want to go buy like a piece of upsold gear. Like how do I kind of approach Articles in Common? But yeah, tell us a little bit more about what it is and how it works.
As an environmentalist, I want to remove that responsibility, or that responsibility off the consumer, that they need to buy better, they need to do more to protect the planet. And I wanted to build that into our business model. So that way it's effortless for the person. They don't have to, because in a perfect world, in my world, I want business to be the advocate for climate. And I want consumerism to support climate action, not because it's the better choice, but because it's the only choice. It's because we all care about this planet that we are destroying. So, and I wanted that to be easy. And so it started out with just outdoor gear resale, but it's expanded into all these other categories that anybody living an outdoor lifestyle would be interested in looking at, whether that's vintage outdoor items, whether that's outdoor themed books, whether that's dog gear. I mean, like outdoor dog sports is such a huge thing now.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, this is kind of a side note, but like, and I'll just briefly touch on it, is that as we think about our impact, we talk about our impact as humans. But if you are a pet owner, you have double the impact, or however many pets you have, right?
Yeah.
And you also think about what you're exposing your pets to. They are exposed to PFAS now through flea and tick solutions, through toys. Think about all the toys, the microplastics that they consume
Hmm.
with the toys that they use,
Yeah.
that they play with. So it's just like all these different touch points that where we get exposed to PFAS and things like that, they now get exposed to in those ways.
Hmm.
And so, and also, for example, like say you have a flea and tick topical solution, or you have a flea and tick collar on your dog, and you go backpacking and they're walking through creeks and things like that,
Hmm.
they're now contaminating those areas with whatever is on their
Yeah.
bodies.
Interesting.
So, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot to think about. And I really just wanted a business that was built for an outdoor lifestyle, but that was just good to the planet too. That I
Hmm.
didn't have to do all this back checking. I didn't have to do all this like legwork to see like, are they really doing what they say they're
Hmm.
doing? Are they
Yeah.
plastic free? Are they reusing packaging? Are they, you know, um, actually contributing to the organizations they say they contribute to? Um, yeah, I mean, I wanted all those things, and that's why that's what Articles in Common is.
Hmm. And so, yeah, so I went on the site as I mentioned, and it was super cool to see all of the different variety of offerings. I know you also, though, like part of it is communicating like buy used gear and fund climate action or help fund climate work. And I don't know the exact wording. Can you talk a little bit about that part of the model too? Because I know that it's not just about like the gear that's sold and bought.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of twofold. I mean, in terms of impacting climate action, we use proceeds from whether they're purchases, and a lot of people, we have a consignment program. We also have a membership program. Um, that's usually, our members are typically like gear editors or athletes with sponsored
Hmm.
athletes with a ton of gear and not a lot of time. And so we use proceeds from all those things to help support organizations that are directly fighting policy to protect
Hmm.
wildlife. So organizations like Earth Justice, Center for Biodiversity,
Wow.
NRDC, Stand
Hmm.
Earth, like Defenders of the Wildlife, um, and even more local, like Friends of LA River,
Nice.
and
Yeah.
but also reducing our impact in outdoor sports. And so
Hmm.
one of the ways that we weren't exactly sure how that was going to evolve, when we first started
Right.
this, and we started accepting donations, gear donations from local climbing gyms, and because there's so many in Southern California,
Yeah.
and on our first donation that we picked up at the gym, it was over 500 pounds worth of climbing shoes. And it was their rental fleet. And I thought, oh my God, what did I just sign up for? But this is part of why I started this, is because I wanted to
Yeah.
see firsthand, what am I going to get if I open the floodgates and say, okay, you can, we're accepting donations. Like, what's going to show up?
Right.
And this was
Yeah.
one of the first things that showed up. And I was like, oh my God, this is a major issue. And this is
Wow.
one gym out of
Yeah.
how many in California? And this is just one fleet of shoes. So each gym goes through 2, 3 fleets a year at minimum, depending on the membership volume.
Yeah.
And so that's what started the Resale Project. That's what evolved into the Resale Project, because I started reaching out to climbing gyms, trying to talk to them, trying to understand why is it that they're not reaching out to the manufacturer of those shoes, and simultaneously, as all of this is unfolding, extended producer responsibility laws are
Yeah.
being proposed in California that have now passed. But that only applies to brands that are a million plus revenue.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, I mean, I just dove all in and I started
Yeah.
talking to all the climbing gyms. I started talking to a bunch of different shoe cobblers and resellers and just doing a lot of research and talking with different manufacturers like Vibram, and
Hmm.
why is it that Vibram and these climbing shoe brands and climbing gyms can't work together to build a circular model? And Articles in Common would help facilitate that. We would help
Yeah.
break down the old shoes, sort the materials, source industrial recyclers to break those components down, and then use our design capabilities to try to and collaborate with brands to upcycle those materials
Yeah.
into something else.
Hmm.
Like if you want to keep talking about using Vibram as an example, that's a really great example because Vibram is on everything now,
Everything.
whether it's a hiking
Everywhere.
boot, whether it's a climbing shoe,
Hmm.
whether it's a sandal, like
Yeah.
whether it's your
It's all
bike,
over.
like it's everywhere. It's like Gore-Tex.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's like, well, why can't we? And it's not that we can't, because I've talked to industrial recyclers and I've always been familiar with this being in the fashion industry because
Hmm.
I would always try to push for more sustainable initiatives in fashion, whatever brand that I worked at. And so I was aware of these different solutions that were out there. And it's like, okay, well, why isn't the outdoors doing this? Why aren't climbing gyms doing this? And it really
Hmm.
just boils down to money. It boils down to
Hmm.
money because let's stick with the climbing shoe, for example. Rubber isn't a high value commodity like aluminum or glass. And so
Hmm.
I would like have to pay for that rubber to be recycled. They wouldn't pay
Right. I was
me.
going to ask about that. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
So it's like, okay, well, I'm just the facilitator. Can I get a buy-in? Can I get buy-in from the climbing gym and the shoe manufacturer to support us to facilitate this? And they don't want to because gyms feel like the newer shoe is more appealing to attract new members and they get them super super cheap. It's just more cost effective for them to replace their
Right.
shoes than it is to
Interesting.
resell their shoes.
Huh.
But I'm saying let's use that as a means to entice membership, to add value to your membership, that
Hmm.
that you know you're instilling circularity into your membership and offering that value to people because that's what people want. Make it easy for folks to do the right thing by doing the right thing for business, right?
Hmm.
And so the resale project in a nutshell is like a way to advocate for circularity in the sport of
Hmm.
climbing specifically. And there's going to be other things that we haven't come across yet. We're starting to dive into um, the snow sports
Hmm.
category, and so because that's another big hitter in terms of carbon footprint and our impact, right? And snow sports, anybody in snow sports, they are understanding the effects of the climate crisis much more than the rest of the outdoor sports because they have to have snow in order to ski. And so they're already being affected. They already see the impact. And yet there's still not efforts being made to make things circular.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, there's within the community, there are some efforts being made, like gear swaps and things like that, which is great.
Hmm.
Um, but from an industry standpoint, there's so much that could be done that we're
Yeah.
not doing.
Hmm. Gosh, that's so interesting from the like what you said about um the business making business sense. Like it's cheaper for them to replace their entire fleet of shoes than to resole and like that is right there. That's it. like I was just talking with someone this morning about, making solar or other energies, like making the choice that is more environmental or sustainable, quote unquote, like that is the business choice also. Like it's cheaper. And I think
Mm-hmm.
like you're also so, I'm so in agreement, or like also very impressed with everything that you're saying around like every time you say I want to take it off the consumer, I want to take it off the individual choices. It's like kind of what we talked about with, when we were talking on Tuesday or whatever day it was, like big oil making the like carbon footprint thing that now everyone talks about. But it's like it's wild to me like that has consistently, that pattern, we've seen that through the environmental space, or like the conversation around brands putting it on consumers to be like, oh, I have to buy better, I have to buy less plastic, I have to do these things, take these actions.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, there's, yeah, the conversations I have with folks who are like, sure, it's all well and good, but it costs way too much. Or like now all these incentives are disappearing. Also, go install things now because the incentives I think are still here till September. But like, there are energy incentives, or there are like ways that make things more cost effective to folks, that such that like a decision is not even about environment or not. It's like it's just a good business decision, or it's a good like cost effective decision for me and my family, or for a brand to like take this action. And so I think just getting to the point of how do we make these things, I mean, honestly, it does kind of boil down to like the business choices that a lot of these places have to make. Like what's affordable, what's more affordable, what's cheaper, like how am I going to go about like explaining this to my team, or like budgeting and everything, and it's like so much of this right now is just because it's like not affordable to do some of these options. But like to your point, it can be, and it can actually be the better choice if we sort of change up the business model entirely. Like what if
Yeah.
circularity was mandated, right? Oh, whoa, well then like okay, that changes the shift. So maybe it's a policy piece here. Maybe it's like not just business. But I think it's fascinating to talk this through, because like your statement on it was cheaper for them to replace than to resell. I'm like, okay, that's it. Like
Yeah.
there you have it. That is
Yeah.
why like so much of this exists. Like so
Yeah.
much of these like broken business models exist.
Yeah. We were even looking at making the resale project a nonprofit itself, because
Wow.
then, and we can apply to get funding and grants and things like that I mean, this is a big endeavor. Like if we
Yeah.
wanted to really, work with all the players involved to make just this one thing circular, it's a big undertaking, but it's very much doable.
Yeah.
So in the
Yeah.
meantime, we just started building a resource on our website for people to be able to resole their shoes easier, find what they
Hmm.
need. Um, and yeah, but like when getting back to that whole narrative that we've been talking about, that we've been like, exploring and trying to expose. You mentioned big oil, and it's like the comparison I make is like big oil has conditioned people that they need to recycle to save the
Yeah.
planet.
Yeah.
And we all know that recycling is this big fallacy, right? Um, and they knew that from the start. And I think, there's a similar pattern here.
Hmm.
And businesses aren't built to do the right thing. Like I said earlier, they're
Hmm.
built to drive profit.
Right.
And so they, came up with this genius marketing to let's put it on the consumer. And then we can
Yeah.
make the consumer feel bad
Yeah.
and feel
And take
shame.
better action. Yeah, right. And change their ways. Yeah. Yeah. So you said this is a huge effort, and it sounds like it. That was going to be my next question, is like, how many people are on your team? Is it just you? I'm always curious, like how the kind of behind the scenes, because I always say for where the climate things are, I say we. I think I even said it in the introduction, and it's like pretty much just me. I mean, I will say I have incredible folks who are raising their hands. Most of them volunteer. I definitely try to pay people for events and stuff, but it's a lot of like people who are interested in working together, which I love and I'm very grateful for, but it is pretty much just me. So I was curious, like, who is Articles in Common? Who's behind that? And like, how many folks does it take to do something like a resale program? Like, how do you bring that to life?
Resale or resale? Resale.
Actually, both. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're a really small team, um, under 10 people, and
Yeah.
a lot of them are freelancers, part-time, uh, so we have to just do everything that we can, like, wear a million hats and have to be able to do a lot of different things. And um, yeah, I think every founder knows, like, you have to be in the trenches. Like, if you're not willing to do it, do all the legwork of your own company, how are you ever going to understand what your company needs to grow? But I mean, we're just like we're just getting started too, because
Hmm.
this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. This is
Yeah.
a marathon. And, I think just having this type of conversation it's building momentum.
Hmm.
But I would like to see this kind of momentum in all outdoor sports. I
Hmm.
would like to see the outdoor community really come together to protect the wild, and not just the mountains, I mean wildlife, and like the BLM with wild horses. And I don't know what's the obsession with killing off wild horses and wolves and coyotes, all to protect cattle ranchers. I don't understand that.
Hmm.
And yet, this is something that we don't talk about, that I don't hear too many people in the outdoor industry talking about this.
Yeah.
And we have this perception that BLM is great because it's public land, right? But then whenever you see like the BLM working to the BLM shooting down grizzly bears in Alaska,
Mm. Yeah.
shooting them down from the helicopters.
Yeah.
It's like, this is the BLM? Or capturing horses, sending them to Mexico for slaughter. It's like, what is the BLM really
Doesn't
doing?
make sense. Yeah.
And there's gotta be special interest, political interest in the BLM, just like there are with, um, say for example, like the National Rifle Association. They have political interests, so it's not any different.
Hmm.
But I
Yeah.
don't think a lot of people want to think about that, or don't think about that, because they associate the industry with what the activity that they do outdoors.
Right.
And that activity, they get so much out of. They get community, they get happiness and fulfillment and achievement and all these things.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard to look at that industry as, I mean, again, that's where my another moment of jaw dropping the other day when we were talking, I was like, we are sold on this sort of, like story, this narrative around outdoor gear bringing us closer to these places and closer to ourselves, right? And it's like, it's like, I want to believe it too. And yet, like, the amount, like, hearing you talk about the amount of like just waste and overconsumption, constant, like, I don't know the academic term or whatever for it, but like constant like buying every year of something, right? There's sort of this like, and I know of course you have the Patagonia, like, don't buy this jacket. I'm sure Patagonia is like a whole other topic that we haven't even dove into specifically, but like I do feel like with gear, there's an interesting sense of and this could be completely anecdotal on my side, but just the like, oh, this new version of this came out, this new, and I know there's like that in fashion too, and apparel, but there's something about the gear industry that feels pretty like, well, no, you also need this new thing now, like, or this new
Mm-hmm.
version of this, or like shoes that wear out so fast. Running shoes, I'm like the worst offender of keeping running shoes like way longer than I need to. And like I have admittedly gotten to like be injured from that. So it's not like there's not an easy answer. I'm not saying like keep your shoes longer, don't buy the new ones, but I'm just don't know what to do, because I think there's like all these questions that you're bringing up and you're grappling with too. It's really interesting. Like, is it about designing? I know we have some shoe companies that are like potentially designing shoes for longer use, but like, what are the answers? Because at the end of the day, like, and you were really helpful at highlighting this for me too, like as we talked, they're trying to sell SKUs, like, or they're trying to sell units, right? And it's sort of
Yeah.
like, okay, well, are we going to like change the whole profit model of like these companies that exist in this space? Like, probably not. I don't know. But it does seem to be like a worse offender than I understood before talking to you of take, make, waste or whatever, of this sort of like linear model that doesn't reuse and upcycle. Again, ironically, because we're talking about like these spaces that are in your background, right? These mountains, these like fields, these really natural, beautiful spaces that this gear theoretically allows us to move through or helps us to do that. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't make sense. It's so hard to like wrap your mind around. And I know you work
It
in this
doesn't
every
make
day.
sense.
No.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. I mean, it's like, I don't know, there's so much I could say about it. It's like, it can be overwhelming for sure. I do feel like the outdoor industry has done a really good job at using nature to fuel profit. We cannot solve a problem of overproduction by producing better. That doesn't work. You have to actually, if you have a overflowing sink, you have to turn the water off at some point. You can't mass produce climate action. You can't mass produce climate action. You can't buy your way into conservation because when it's gone, it's gone. It's not coming back. And I don't think people understand like the finality of that. I,
Yeah.
I think like we just get so caught up in, I mean, some people talk about looking cool on the trail. And it's like, I get it. I used to be that person. I used to be a
Yeah.
gearhead, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like at the end of the day, none of that matters. It's what we've been told.
Yeah.
It's what we've been programmed to think
Mm-hmm.
that we and now it's like, we have all these community groups, right? Like hiking clubs and cycling clubs and run clubs, and it's all great, it's all great to connect with our community. But now these brands want to sponsor those events too. They want to integrate themselves so far into the community that you cannot separate them
Yeah. Right.
from anything.
Yeah.
So it's all very subliminal in a way
Yeah.
because you start to just like, you see it so much that you become immune to it. It just becomes normal. It just
It's just
becomes
part of it.
expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so interesting. The community spaces infiltration is like real, is very real as well.
Yeah, for
And it's
sure.
funny as I'm like starting to bring these ideas and this initiative to the world, I'm like, we talked about this. Like I don't have a sponsor for this podcast. I'm not like kind of oriented to one brand, and there's like a little bit of that's by choice, but like I also have another podcast where we couldn't have existed without the help of brands, and like
Yeah.
that was like a super grateful thing that we were able to then bring it to the world. But at the time we were like, well, these brands need to learn about like inclusion and access and opening up the aperture on the outdoors. But I don't know, it's something I grapple with a lot because it's sort of like, well, okay, but who is like doing this well or doing this right in the space, and like does partnering with a brand automatically like anoint them as like they're doing it right, and like is everyone doing it right? I don't know, it's kind of like a whole ethical question I have, but it's very
Brand
interesting because
approval,
brand approval, yeah, and you're
validation,
right,
validation. Yeah.
right, exactly. But it is interesting
Yeah.
how they're funding these spaces where we connect and find community and friendship, or just feel less alone.
Mm-hmm.
And but like having, again, back to like the business of this stuff, like having kind of the funding to support activists or like community groups to do this yeah, you need it, but it's so hard.
But
I
the
don't
thing
know.
is, to your point though, about, the whole sponsorship cycle, is that if the outdoor industry were to talk more about climate, like we're all in these silos, right? There's the
Mm,
outdoor sector, there's the climate sector, there's the conservation sector, there's the fashion sector. We can't solve a problem of circularity independent from each other.
mm-hmm.
And so if the industry would just open itself up to start working with the climate sector, start working with
Yeah.
all these different interacting with all these different divisions, different areas, they wouldn't be so reliant on brand sponsorship. They could get sponsored from other avenues, from other organizations, from other
Hmm.
companies, from other, they could get funding in other ways. Everything in the outdoors has been built on the brand.
Yeah, it has.
And I really feel like outdoor culture has become obsessed with brands.
Hmm.
And I really hope, the younger generation is already adopting secondhand into their lifestyle as a lifestyle in
Yeah.
every facet of their life. And I hope older generations can learn from that and adapt to that. But I mean, yeah, I
Yeah.
forget where I was going to go with that.
No, I think it's true. The generational piece of secondhand is interesting. Yeah, you were
Yeah.
saying like outdoor culture is based so much on outdoor brands. Like that alone, I completely agree with. And it is, I'm like, as we're talking, I'm realizing like it is subliminal. Like I when you really look, like I went to, we went to Tahoe around the time of like Broken Arrow, Western States, TrailCon, and it's like everything is. I did an activation that had a brand on it, right? It's like you're like it's
Yeah.
not. It's just like there. It's part of it, and it's so easy to forget like how it kind of like flows through the veins of everything now. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
there, it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, seriously though, like, it's like you can't go anywhere without someone promoting their own product. They're
Yeah,
like influencers now have their own
yeah,
drop. They get to collaborate with different outdoor brands and create their own special collection. It's like, really,
yeah,
I mean, when do we draw the line?
yeah,
And I remember what I was going to say, or kind of like where I was going with this is like, we're trying to reshape outdoor culture, but it's like we're also just like, because it's all been about the brand, it's all been about the gear, so much emphasis has been on the gear,
yeah.
and we've been told that we need this gear, or like the ultralight movement. That's another thing,
Mm-hmm.
everything's got to be ultralight now. But our relationship with nature is not dependent on gear.
Yeah,
Our
yeah,
relationship with nature, at its core, there is no place for gear
yeah.
there. And
Right.
if we all just took the time to really appreciate what we're being given when we go explore, when we go adventure, we wouldn't need that. We wouldn't need to be sold.
Yeah.
We would know what's at stake. We would know what we're at stake of losing. I mean, when these animals go extinct, you can't bring them back.
I think the piece here that I also wanted to ask you about as we like come back up to both wrapping up but also like talking more about solutions is I love what you've started to create with a couple other folks. And I was wondering if you could talk about Wild for Climate, which you've generously brought me into this week, and I'm super excited to dive in more. But that seems to be what a cool space of folks working on a variety of different storytelling initiatives and honestly like truly like-minded people. I was scrolling through everything being like, oh, this was a place, this is the place for me, like I needed to come here. So what is Wild for Climate, and what are the kind of like big plans in your brain for this group?
Wild for Climate is just another way to navigate around a gate. Like this whole trajectory, this whole journey that I've been on, it's all about getting around the hurdles, getting around the gatekeepers in this
Mm-hmm.
industry.
Yeah.
And I really, one of the things that you mentioned is like break the panel, which really resonates with
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
because going to all these outdoor industry events, it was like, like I said earlier, I would just always leave really disappointed. And I want that to change. I don't want to create some separate subculture, because what does that really solve, right? So I wanted that to change. I want there to be a space to talk about the climate crisis, to talk about climate anxiety, to talk about how, like, for athletes to openly talk about it, real talk, because they
Yeah.
can't have a real conversation
Right.
about climate when there's all these brand sponsors. That can't
Yes.
happen
Hmm.
because they don't want to lose that sponsorship. So we need a place to, I mean, we that's another reason why we need to move away from brand sponsorship so much. That's the pinnacle of everything. Everything in the outdoors revolves around that relationship. But
Yep.
that's the crux,
Right. Yep.
that's the crux of it.
Hmm.
Um, and so Wild for Climate is a place to get around those hurdles, to talk about the climate crisis, to address some of these issues, like within the BLM and with the Marine Mammal Protection uh, and Endangered Species Protection Act. Um, just those are examples of like things that we want to talk about. Climate injustice, um, what what communities are going to be impacted and how are they going to be affected as the severity continues to increase. I mean, we're already seeing it,
Yeah.
but we're not talking about it. And so, that Wild for Climate in a nutshell, is we're looking at as a Kickstarter for projects that address climate issues in the outdoors, whether that's getting an editorial piece published. A lot of writers can't get their stories told because about climate specifically, because again, of brand sponsorship relationship. A lot of creatives out there that want to address the climate issue and can't because of the outdoor brands that they work for or outdoor organizations that they work for. They just feel like they can't really talk about their true opinions of the climate crisis and what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think creating that space and having like a unified front to build this momentum of shifting outdoor culture from this frame of mind of conquering nature to protecting nature.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for creating it because it's really cool and I'm so excited to see where it goes. I
I'm
want
excited too.
to,
I'm excited for
yeah.
you to be a part of this because, I mean, instantly when we talked, I just
Yeah.
felt like we were on the same trajectory.
Yeah. I mean, even like reading what Wild for Climate is about, I'm like, oh, yeah, we need to definitely work together because that's essentially what I'm doing as well. And I think we need more people doing it. Like, the more the merrier, like the more people breaking the
Yes,
panel, the better. Like, that's great. I think it's
totally.
all, and realizing that like this aha moment, if you will, to use that phrase, like is occurring for a lot of other folks in the outdoor space, saying like, wait, there is actually a disconnect. You think it might be obvious to think of like the overlap of climate, environmental protection, and outdoor recreation, but it's not. And that's why I started this. And that's why I'm
Mm-hmm.
so excited to talk to you about what you're starting and doing and building, is because like they're sure there might be a link in people's minds that they think are obvious, but it's actually like in reality the link really isn't there unless we start talking about it more, unless we start communicating about it and finding
Mm-hmm.
like-minded folks like you're organizing and building. So I'm really excited to be involved in that. And it sounds like sort of like TB, like to be announced, some initiatives and or projects are coming down the pipeline. So excited to see where that, like,
Yeah.
just because folks I know listening will be like, well, how do I access it? And I'm just saying, like, just wait, just see. It will happen in the world. I want to ask the last question before I let you go because we've been on for a while and I so appreciate your time. What, you can choose from many, doesn't have to be the one, but what is a favorite climate solution of yours that is not your own? So it might not be like what we've kind of spent some time talking about, what you really work in, but like what is a climate solution that's getting you really excited in the world that you want to talk about and maybe alert folks of?
I'm so excited for so many different initiatives that I see coming through. There's a lot of trepidation about AI, but I also see a lot of really, really great innovation coming out of that to better
Hmm.
protect wildlife and wild spaces. One of the things like that's just something personal to me, is marine life and
Hmm.
and and the ocean, the health of our ocean. And our import export traffic is destroying marine life. And I volunteered for an organization in SoCal that they're a mortality response organization. When marine mammals strand themselves or wash up ashore, they're one of the people to respond. And
Hmm.
I was a part of that. And this year has been astronomical in the number of whales that have washed ashore.
Wow.
And a
Yeah.
lot of that, there's a lot of factors, but one big one is just commercial ship strikes. They get hit by these ships.
Yeah.
And in Denmark, they've just introduced a commercial ship that is fully powered by solar. Um, and also integrates AI to be able to detect marine
Wow.
life around the ship and to automatically slow down when it detects
Wow.
mammals nearby.
Wow. That's amazing.
So to me, I mean, it's addressing so many issues in one solution. And there's so many great ones out there, but for
Yeah.
me, like anything that can uh, help offset fossil fuels, but also protect wildlife
Yeah.
is a win-win for me.
Yeah, that does both. That is, I wonder, I might try to find a link to that or find a way
Yeah,
to point people
I'll
towards
send
that
it to
because I
you.
hadn't
I
heard of
saw it on
that. Yeah, please.
LinkedIn. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, please do. I would love to put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining. This was really wonderful to chat with you more. I mean, again, this was like a little selfish because I feel like the first day we talked, I was like, yep, I need to have you on the podcast. And also, I want to hear so much more about what you have to say about all of this. So, for those that have not yet explored Articles in Common, we will also link to that so they can kind of dive in and see all that you have to offer on the site and also in your business model. But really, really appreciate your time. And this is truly just the beginning. I'm not just saying that. Like, I can't wait for what we do together because there's so many ideas I know we both have percolating. But yeah, it was really great to chat more. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks, Addie. I'm really glad that we've like connected, and I'm equally excited for what's ahead. Yeah.
Totally.